I'm Rebecca Morrison, 34 years old, and I never thought inheriting my grandmother's art gallery would put me at the center of an FBI investigation. When Eleanor died, she left me her $15 million Charleston gallery that had been in our family for decades. But the day before, the will-reading federal agents raided the building looking for stolen Nazi artwork. My siblings Madison and Harrison were furious. I inherited everything, but they had no idea about the secret letter my 12-year-old son Tyler found hidden in grandmother's desk. A letter that would expose our family's darkest secret and force me to choose between millions of dollars and doing what's right. If you're watching this, please hit subscribe for powerful family stories that prove sometimes the most painful truths lead to the most important decisions. Growing up in Charleston's historic district meant understanding art before I could legally drive. My grandmother, Eleanor Morrison, had built Morrison Fine Arts from a small antique shop in 1960, transforming it into one of the Southeast's most prestigious galleries, specializing in European paintings from the early 20th century. While other kids played video games, I spent summers learning to authenticate brush strokes and understanding the delicate stories behind each masterpiece. Eleanor was more than my grandmother. She was my mentor, my business partner, and the only family member who truly understood my passion for art history. By age 16, I was helping her research provenance for potential acquisitions. By 25, I'd earned my art history degree from the College of Charleston and was managing the gallery's authentication process. My dream was always to carry on her legacy of bringing beautiful art to people who appreciated its historical significance. My sister Madison, 4 years older, had different priorities. Madison was the ambitious daughter who could charm any real estate client but couldn't commit to anything that didn't generate immediate profit. While I studied art history, Madison built a successful property development company that transformed historic Charleston buildings into luxury condos. Her projects were profitable, but often controversial, prioritizing modern amenities over historical preservation. My brother Harrison, 6 years older, represented the family's financial ambitions. Harrison had parlayed his MBA from Duke into a successful investment banking career, managing portfolios for Charleston's wealthiest families. He understood numbers and market trends, but viewed art purely as an investment commodity rather than cultural heritage. My siblings had always viewed my dedication to the gallery as impractical romanticism, while they pursued more serious careers. When I divorced my ex-husband 3 years ago and moved back to Charleston with my son Tyler, their condescension became more pronounced. Madison frequently suggested I should get a real job instead of playing with old paintings, while Harrison questioned whether the gallery was even profitable enough to justify the family's continued investment. Eleanor watched these dynamics with growing concern. During our last authentication session together, just months before her death, she pulled me aside in the gallery's restoration room, where the smell of conservation chemicals mixed with centuries-old varnish. "Rebecca," she said, her weathered hands still steady as she examined a suspicious signature on a 1920s landscape. "I've been thinking about the future of this place. Your siblings mean well, but they don't understand what we've built here." Madison sees square footage, where we see cultural preservation. Harrison sees profit margins, where we see historical responsibility. I nodded, understanding the weight behind her words. Morrison Fine Arts wasn't just a business. It was 40 years of careful curation relationships with museums worldwide, and a reputation built painting by painting. "Promise me something," Eleanor continued, her sharp blue eyes serious. "Whatever happens to me, don't let them turn this place into quick cash. The art, the collection, the responsibility to preserve history, it's worth more than money." That conversation haunted me after her sudden heart attack 3 months later. At the funeral, while I grieved the loss of my mentor, I couldn't help noticing how quickly Madison and Harrison began discussing practical matters and maximizing asset value. The morning before Eleanor's will reading, I arrived at Morrison Fine Arts to find federal agents systematically photographing every painting in our main exhibition hall. Special Agent Sarah Chen, a serious woman in her 40s, with kind eyes but authoritative presence, approached me as I stood frozen in the doorway. "Ms. Morrison, I'm Agent Chen, FBI Art Crime Team. We have a warrant to examine specific pieces in your grandmother's collection." My hands trembled as I read the warrant. They were looking for artwork stolen from Jewish families during World War II, paintings that had been looted by Nazi forces and never returned to their rightful owners. The list included 3 pieces currently hanging in our gallery: a Monet water lily study, a small Picasso sketch, and a landscape by a lesser-known German expressionist. "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "My grandmother was a respected dealer. She would never have knowingly acquired stolen artwork." Agent Chen's expression remained professionally neutral. "We're not making accusations, Ms. Morrison. We're investigating the provenance of certain pieces based on new information from the World Jewish Restitution Organization. Some artwork stolen during the war has been surfacing in legitimate galleries whose owners had no knowledge of the piece's history." The implications hit me like a physical blow. If any of our artwork had been stolen, the gallery's reputation would be destroyed. Worse, we could face criminal charges for possessing stolen property, even if Eleanor had acquired the pieces innocently decades ago. "What happens now?" I asked. "We'll complete our documentation today," Agent Chen explained. "If our investigation confirms these pieces were stolen, they'll need to be returned to the families or their heirs. We understand this is difficult, but it's about justice for families who lost everything." As the agents worked, I called Madison and Harrison to explain the situation. Their responses were predictably focused on financial implications rather than moral considerations. "This is a disaster," Madison said immediately. "Do you have any idea what this could do to the gallery's value? We need to get ahead of this before it becomes public." Harrison was equally pragmatic. "We need to hire the best lawyers immediately. There has to be a way to challenge this. Grandmother bought those pieces in good faith decades ago." Neither of them seemed concerned about the possibility that families had been robbed of their cultural heritage. Their immediate instinct was to protect the gallery's financial value rather than consider the human cost of potentially possessing stolen art. That evening, as I tucked Tyler into bed in our apartment above the gallery, he asked the question that had been haunting me all day. "Mom, if those paintings were really stolen from families, shouldn't we give them back out of the mouths of babes?" My 12-year-old son had immediately grasped the moral clarity that seemed to elude the adults in our family. The will reading took place the next morning in the conference room of Crawford and Associates, the law firm that had handled Eleanor's affairs for 20 years. Attorney James Crawford, a distinguished man in his 70s, with silver hair and gentle demeanor, had known our family since I was a child. The mahogany conference table reflected the morning sunlight streaming through tall windows overlooking Charleston's historic district. Madison sat rigidly beside her husband Victoria, a successful architect who shared her practical approach to family matters. Harrison flanked them with his business partner Nathan Brooks, whom he'd brought along for financial consultation. I sat with Tyler, who had insisted on attending to support Mom during the sad lawyer meeting. Crawford opened Eleanor's will with ceremonial gravity, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent handling family legacies. Eleanor Morrison was very specific about her wishes. Crawford began adjusting his reading glasses. She revised this will multiple times in her final year to ensure it precisely reflected her vision for the gallery's future. The preliminary bequests were standard: charitable donations to the Charleston Museum, gifts to longtime gallery employees, and modest amounts to extended family members. Then Crawford reached the heart of the document. To my beloved granddaughter Rebecca Morrison, who has shown unwavering dedication to our family's mission of preserving and sharing artistic heritage, and who possesses both the knowledge and ethical foundation necessary to guide Morrison Fine Arts into the future, I leave the entirety of the gallery, including all artwork, the building, and associated assets. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Harrison's face flushed red as he processed the implications. Victoria shifted uncomfortably, clearly recognizing the family tension that was about to explode. "There must be some mistake," Madison finally said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. Eleanor wouldn't have wanted to create such an imbalance in the family inheritance. Crawford's expression remained professionally neutral. "Mrs. Sterling, I assure you that Eleanor was quite clear about her decision. She specifically stated that Rebecca demonstrated the commitment and expertise necessary to maintain the gallery's reputation and continue its cultural mission." Harrison leaned forward, his investment banker instincts taking over. "What about us? We're her grandchildren too. This distribution seems inequitable. Your grandmother established separate provisions for both of you," Crawford explained, sliding documents across the table. "Madison, you received the family's real estate holdings in downtown Charleston, including 3 historic properties currently generating rental income. Harrison, you inherit Eleanor's investment portfolio and retirement accounts." Madison studied the real estate documents with her developer's eye for value. "These properties are worth maybe $2 million total. The gallery and its collection are worth at least $15 million. Actually," Crawford said carefully, "given recent market conditions and the gallery's reputation, the total value could be significantly higher. However, there are some complicating factors we need to discuss." He pulled out another folder, his expression growing serious. Eleanor was aware of ongoing investigations into the provenance of certain pieces in the collection. She left specific instructions about how to handle any discoveries of problematic artwork. My heart raced. Eleanor had known about the potential for stolen artwork. How long had she been aware of this possibility? "What kind of instructions?" I asked. Before Crawford could answer, Tyler suddenly spoke up. "Mom, I think Grandma Eleanor wanted me to give you something." All eyes turned to my son as he pulled a sealed envelope from his backpack. "She gave this to me a few weeks before she died and told me to bring it to the lawyer meeting. She said it was very important and that I should only give it to you after the will was read." Crawford examined the envelope, noting Eleanor's distinctive handwriting. "For Rebecca, to be opened only after the will reading in the presence of the family." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and found a handwritten letter, along with several old photographs and documents. As I read Eleanor's words, the blood drained from my face. Eleanor's letter was a confession that shattered everything I thought I knew about our family's history. "My dearest Rebecca, if you are reading this, then the FBI investigation I've been expecting has finally begun. I need you to know the truth about how Morrison Fine Arts acquired some of its most valuable pieces and why I'm entrusting the gallery's future to you alone. In 1963, 3 years after opening the gallery, I was approached by a man named Klaus Weber, who claimed to be a German art dealer, liquidating his collection before immigrating to America. He offered me 3 extraordinary pieces at prices far below market value: a Monet, a Picasso, and a landscape by Heinrich Müller. I was young, ambitious, and didn't ask enough questions about their provenance. It wasn't until 1987 that I learned the truth. Klaus Weber was not a legitimate dealer. He was a former Nazi officer who had participated in the systematic looting of Jewish families' art collections during the war. The pieces he sold me had been stolen from the Rosenberg family of Vienna, who were murdered at Auschwitz in 1943. I have spent the last 35 years trying to locate any surviving members of the Rosenberg family to return their stolen heritage. The documents in this envelope contain my research, including contact information for Sarah Rosenberg Cohen, the granddaughter of the original owners who now lives in New York. Madison and Harrison can never know this truth. They would see only the financial loss and would fight to keep the stolen artwork rather than do what is morally right. But you, my dear Rebecca, understand that some things are worth more than money. The choice is yours. You can keep the paintings and maintain the gallery's financial value, or you can return them to their rightful family and accept the financial consequences. I pray you will choose justice over profit, even though it will cost you millions. The gallery's reputation and your family's honor depend on your decision. All my love and faith in your integrity. Grandmother Eleanor. The letter fell from my hands as the full weight of Eleanor's confession settled over the room. Madison and Harrison stared at me expectantly, clearly sensing that whatever the letter contained would dramatically impact their inheritance calculations. "What does it say?" Madison demanded. I looked around the table at my family, Madison calculating real estate values, Harrison computing investment returns, Tyler watching me with the innocent trust that only children possess. The choice Eleanor had left me was impossible: financial security for my family or justice for the Rosenberg family. "It's complicated," I said finally. Eleanor left instructions about some of the artwork in the collection. Harrison's eyes narrowed. "What kind of instructions?" "If there are legal issues with the collection, it affects all of our inheritances." Crawford cleared his throat diplomatically. "Perhaps we should schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss the specific details. This has been an emotionally difficult day for everyone." But Madison wasn't willing to wait. "No, we need to understand this now. Rebecca, if there are problems with the artwork, we need to address them as a family." I folded the letter carefully, buying time to think. The Monet alone was worth $8 million. The Picasso was valued at $3 million. Returning them would reduce the gallery's value by more than half, but keeping them meant profiting from the Holocaust. The letter contains information about the provenance research Eleanor was conducting, I said carefully. She wanted to ensure that all of our artwork has clear ethical ownership history. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. I needed time to process Eleanor's confession and decide how to handle the impossible choice she'd left me. Over the following week, as news of the FBI investigation leaked to Charleston's art community, my siblings launched a coordinated campaign to pressure me into protecting the gallery's financial value at all costs. Madison arrived at the gallery Monday morning with Victoria and a team of lawyers ready to fight the federal investigation with every legal tool available. "We've researched the statute of limitations on stolen property claims," Madison announced, spreading legal documents across Eleanor's antique desk. "If Eleanor acquired those pieces more than 30 years ago, in good faith, we might be able to challenge any restitution demands." "Madison," I said carefully, "what if the pieces really were stolen from Holocaust victims? Don't you think the moral obligation outweighs the legal technicalities?" Victoria Madison's husband jumped in with his architect's precision. "Rebecca, we understand the emotional appeal of that argument, but you have to consider the practical implications. Returning valuable artwork based on unproven claims could set a precedent that destroys the entire gallery." Harrison arrived that afternoon with his own team of financial advisors, armed with spreadsheets and market analyses that reduced Eleanor's life work to numbers on a balance sheet. "I've run the calculations," Harrison said, pulling up charts on his laptop. "If we lose those 3 pieces, the gallery's total value drops to approximately $6 million. That's a $9 million loss based on unsubstantiated claims from 70 years ago." "They're not unsubstantiated," I replied, thinking of Eleanor's letter hidden in my apartment upstairs. "The FBI doesn't investigate art theft claims without significant evidence. Evidence that could be challenged in court," Harrison countered. We need to hire the best art law specialists in the country. This is about protecting our family's legacy. But I knew it wasn't about legacy. It was about money. Neither Madison nor Harrison had shown any interest in the gallery's cultural mission or Eleanor's vision of preserving artistic heritage. They saw only financial assets to be protected and maximized. The pressure intensified when local media picked up the story. Charleston's Post and Courier ran a front-page article about the FBI investigation, complete with photographs of the gallery and speculation about the artwork's value. Suddenly, our family's private inheritance dispute had become a public scandal. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," Madison said during an emergency family meeting that Thursday. "Our reputation is being destroyed by these allegations. We need to get ahead of this story and protect the gallery's standing in the community." "How do you suggest we do that?" I asked. "By fighting back," Harrison said firmly. "We hire the best lawyers, challenge every aspect of the FBI's investigation, and make it clear that Morrison Fine Arts has always operated with the highest ethical standards." The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted to protect Eleanor's reputation by doing exactly what she had feared, prioritizing money over morality and fighting to keep artwork that might have been stolen from Holocaust victims. That night, Tyler found me sitting in the gallery after hours staring at the Monet that might have hung in the Rosenberg family's Vienna home before Nazi soldiers tore it from their walls. "Mom, you look sad," Tyler said, climbing into the chair beside me. "I'm trying to make a very difficult decision, sweetheart, about the paintings the FBI wants." I nodded, amazed by my son's ability to cut through adult complications to the heart of any issue. "Grandma Eleanor's letter said something about giving them back, didn't it?" Tyler asked. I looked at my 12-year-old son, this wise little person, who somehow understood moral complexity better than the adults in our family. "How did you know that?" "Because Grandma Eleanor was always talking about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. And because you've been looking at those paintings like they make you sad instead of happy." Out of the mouths of babes again. Tyler had grasped the essential truth that my siblings were determined to ignore. Some decisions are about more than money. Agent Chen called Friday morning with an update that confirmed my worst fears. "Ms. Morrison, our investigation has uncovered additional documentation about the 3 pieces in question. We've located records from the Rosenberg family's insurance claims filed in Vienna in 1947, including detailed descriptions and photographs that match your artwork exactly." My heart sank. The evidence was conclusive. Our most valuable pieces had been stolen from a Jewish family who died in the Holocaust. "What happens next?" I asked. "We'll need to coordinate with the World Jewish Restitution Organization to contact the surviving family members." Sarah Rosenberg Cohen, the granddaughter of the original owners, has been searching for these pieces for decades. After hanging up, I sat in Eleanor's office, surrounded by the photographs and documents from her letter. She had known this day would come. She had spent 35 years researching the Rosenberg family, preparing for the moment when the truth would finally surface. Among Eleanor's papers, I found a photograph that took my breath away: the Rosenberg family in their Vienna home in 1938, with the Monet hanging prominently behind them. A young couple with 2 small children, smiling at the camera, with no idea that their world was about to be destroyed. On the back of the photograph, Eleanor had written, "Heinrich and Ruth Rosenberg, with children, David and Sarah Vienna, 1938. David and Sarah died at Auschwitz, 1943. Their daughter Sarah survived hidden by neighbors. She deserves to have her family's art returned." I was holding a piece of history. Not just art history, but human history. The Monet wasn't just a beautiful painting worth millions of dollars. It was a family treasure that had witnessed love loss and unimaginable tragedy. When Madison and Harrison arrived for our scheduled meeting that afternoon, I had made my decision. "I've been in contact with the FBI," I announced. "The evidence is conclusive. Those 3 pieces were stolen from the Rosenberg family during the Holocaust. Madison's face went pale. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to give them up. Eleanor bought them in good faith. We're innocent purchasers. Innocent purchasers of stolen goods, I corrected. Madison, these paintings belong to a family who were murdered at Auschwitz. Their granddaughter has been searching for them for decades. Harrison pulled out his laptop, immediately switching to damage control mode. We need to calculate the exact financial impact. Maybe we can negotiate some kind of compensation arrangement with the restitution organization. You want to negotiate with Holocaust survivors? I asked incredulously. I want to protect our family's financial interests, Harrison replied. This isn't about the Holocaust. It's about property law and inheritance rights. The callousness of his response crystallized everything Eleanor had understood about my siblings. They were good people in many ways, but when faced with a choice between money and morality, they would choose money every time. There's something else you need to know, I said, pulling out Eleanor's letter. Grandmother knew the truth about these paintings. She's known for 35 years. I read them Eleanor's confession, watching their faces change from shock to anger to calculation. When I finished, the room was silent, except for the ticking of Eleanor's antique clock. She knew, Madison finally whispered. She knew they were stolen, and she never told us. She was protecting you, I said. She knew you would react exactly like this, focusing on the money instead of the moral obligation. Harrison stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked Charleston's historic district. This changes everything. If Eleanor knew the paintings were stolen and kept them anyway, she was complicit in a crime. We could all be charged as accessories. Or, I said quietly, we could do what she always intended, return the artwork to its rightful family, and accept the financial consequences. Madison laughed bitterly. Accept the consequences, Rebecca, you're talking about. Giving away $11 million, that's not accepting consequences. That's financial suicide. It's justice, I corrected. It's stupidity, Harrison snapped. You have a 12-year-old son to think about. What about his college fund, his future? You're willing to sacrifice Tyler's security for some abstract moral principle. The mention of Tyler's future hit me like a physical blow. They were right about one thing. Returning the stolen artwork would dramatically reduce my inheritance and impact my ability to provide for my son's education and future. But then I thought about the Rosenberg children, David and Sarah, who never got to grow up, never got to go to college, never got to have futures because they were murdered for being Jewish. Their family's artwork had survived when they couldn't. Didn't their memory deserve justice? That weekend, I made a decision that would change everything. I called Agent Chen and asked her to arrange a meeting with Sarah Rosenberg Cohen, the surviving granddaughter of the original owners. Sarah flew down from New York on Monday, an elegant woman in her 70s, with silver hair and eyes that held decades of pain and resilience. We met at the gallery after hours, just the two of us surrounded by the artwork that connected our families across decades of tragedy and silence. I never thought I would see them again, Sarah said softly, standing before the Monet that had hung in her grandparents' Vienna home. I was 5 years old when the soldiers came. I remember my grandmother hiding me in the neighbor's cellar, telling me to be very quiet until she came back for me. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she continued. She never came back. None of them did. But I remembered this painting hanging in our dining room, how the light would catch the water lilies in the afternoon sun. I showed her the photograph Eleanor had found, the one of her family in their Vienna home, with the Monet visible in the background. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the image of grandparents she barely remembered. Your grandmother, Sarah said, looking at me with surprising kindness. She tried to find me, didn't she? I received letters over the years from someone researching the Rosenberg family, but I was afraid to respond. I thought it might be another scam. I nodded, pulling out Eleanor's research files. She spent 35 years trying to locate you. She wanted to return your family's artwork, but she was afraid of the legal complications. Sarah studied Eleanor's notes, decades of careful research, and genuine remorse documented in meticulous detail. She was trying to do the right thing. She left the choice to me, I said. She knew my siblings would fight to keep the paintings, but she hoped I would choose justice over money. Sarah looked around the gallery, taking in the other artwork and the obvious care that had been taken to preserve and display each piece. This is a beautiful place. Your grandmother created something meaningful here. She did. But she also knew that some of it was built on stolen heritage. We stood together in comfortable silence, two women connected by tragedy and the possibility of redemption. Finally, Sarah spoke. "I don't want to destroy what your grandmother built," she said. "But those paintings, they're all I have left of my family. They're the only physical connection to grandparents I barely remember." "Then they should be yours," I said without hesitation. "They should have always been yours." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. "You understand what this means financially, what you're giving up." "I understand what it means morally," I replied, "and that's worth more than money." When I told Madison and Harrison about my decision to return the stolen artwork, their reaction was everything Eleanor had predicted, and worse. "You've lost your mind," Madison said, her voice shaking with rage. "You're throwing away $11 million based on some emotional conversation with a stranger." "She's not a stranger," I corrected. "She's the rightful owner of artwork that was stolen from her family during the Holocaust." Harrison was more calculating in his anger. "Rebecca, you're not just making this decision for yourself. You're making it for Tyler, for our family's future, for the gallery's survival. You don't have the right to be this selfish." "Selfish," I repeated incredulously. "I'm returning stolen property to Holocaust survivors, and you're calling me selfish. You're destroying our inheritance based on guilt over something that happened before we were born." Madison shot back. "Eleanor made a mistake 35 years ago, but that doesn't mean we have to pay for it now." The argument escalated quickly, with both siblings threatening legal action to prevent me from returning the artwork. Harrison claimed I was acting irrationally and suggested I needed psychological evaluation. Madison threatened to challenge Eleanor's will on the grounds that I was clearly unfit to manage the gallery's assets. "You can't stop me," I said finally. "Eleanor left the gallery to me, and I have the legal right to make decisions about its collection." "We'll see about that," Harrison said ominously. "We'll fight this in court if necessary." As they stormed out of the gallery, I realized that my decision to do the right thing would cost me more than money. It would cost me my relationship with my siblings, possibly permanently. That night, Tyler found me crying in Eleanor's office, surrounded by legal documents and moral dilemmas. "Mom, are you okay?" I pulled him into my lap, this wise little boy who had somehow inherited Eleanor's moral clarity. "I'm sad because I have to make a decision that will make some people very angry." "The decision about giving back the paintings." I nodded, amazed again by his ability to understand complex situations. "But it's the right decision, isn't it?" Tyler asked. "Grandma Eleanor wanted you to give them back because they belong to people who died in the war." "Yes, sweetheart, it's the right decision. But it means we won't have as much money, and your aunt and uncle are very upset with me." Tyler was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the seriousness that only children can bring to adult problems. "Mom, would you rather have money or know that you did the right thing?" Out of the mouths of babes, one final time. My 12-year-old son had distilled the entire moral dilemma into its essential truth. "I'd rather do the right thing," I said. "Then that's what we should do," Tyler said simply. "Grandma Eleanor would be proud of you." The ceremony to return the stolen artwork took place 3 weeks later in the gallery's main exhibition hall. Sarah Rosenberg Cohen had flown down from New York with her daughter and grandson. 3 generations of a family finally reunited with their stolen heritage. Agent Chen was there to document the restitution, along with representatives from the World Jewish Restitution Organization and several local media outlets. The story had attracted national attention as an example of how families and institutions could choose justice over profit when confronted with the legacy of Nazi art theft. Madison and Harrison had boycotted the ceremony, still furious about my decision, and pursuing legal challenges to prevent the artwork's return. Their lawyers had filed injunctions and appeals, but ultimately my legal right to manage the gallery's collection was clear. As Sarah stood before the Monet that had hung in her grandparents' Vienna home, she spoke about the importance of remembering history and honoring the victims of the Holocaust. "This painting survived when my family couldn't," she said, her voice strong despite her tears. "For 70 years, it has been separated from its rightful home. Today, it comes home to us, and with it, the memory of Heinrich and Ruth Rosenberg, who loved beautiful things and believed in the power of art to make the world better." The financial impact of returning the stolen artwork was significant. The gallery's value dropped from $15 million to approximately $4 million, and I had to take out loans to cover operating expenses and employee salaries. But something unexpected happened in the weeks following the restitution ceremony. The story of Morrison Fine Arts choosing justice over profit attracted attention from collectors, museums, and art lovers around the world. Donations poured in from people who wanted to support a gallery that had done the right thing. New collectors offered to loan or donate pieces to replace what we had returned. The Smithsonian reached out about a partnership to create an exhibition about art, restitution, and historical justice. Most importantly, Tyler watched everything with the pride and understanding that only children possess when they see their parents stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. 6 months after the restitution ceremony, I received a letter from Sarah Rosenberg Cohen that brought tears to my eyes. "Dear Rebecca, I wanted you to know that the Monet now hangs in my living room in New York, where my great-grandchildren can see it every day and remember the family they never got to meet. But more than that, your decision to return our stolen heritage has given us something we thought we had lost forever: faith that there are still people in the world who choose justice over profit." My grandson David, named for my uncle who died at Auschwitz, is studying art history at Columbia University. He says he wants to work in art restitution because of your example. You've inspired a new generation to care about historical justice. The Rosenberg family will never forget what you did for us. You gave us back more than paintings. You gave us back our faith in humanity. With eternal gratitude, Sarah. 1 year after Eleanor's death, I stood in the gallery's main exhibition hall, preparing for our first major exhibition since the restitution. Art and Justice: Stories of Restitution and Redemption featured pieces from collections around the world that had been returned to their rightful owners, along with the stories of the families who had lost and found their cultural heritage. Tyler, now 13, and even wiser than before, helped me arrange the final display panels that told the story of the Rosenberg family and our gallery's choice to return their stolen artwork. "Mom, do you ever regret it?" he asked as we worked together. I looked around the gallery, smaller now, less valuable in monetary terms, but somehow more meaningful than it had ever been under Eleanor's management. We had fewer expensive pieces, but every artwork in our collection had clear ethical provenance. We had less money but more integrity. "Never," I said honestly. Eleanor left me a choice between money and morality, and I chose the path she hoped I would take. Madison and Harrison had eventually stopped their legal challenges, though our relationships remained strained. They couldn't understand how I could choose principle over profit, and I couldn't understand how they could prioritize money over justice for Holocaust victims. Perhaps someday we would find a way to bridge that gap, but for now, we maintained polite distance. The gallery's financial situation had stabilized, thanks to donations, grants, and new partnerships with museums and universities. We would never be as wealthy as we might have been, but we were sustainable and ethical in ways that made Eleanor's legacy truly meaningful. As the sun set over Charleston's historic district, painting the gallery walls in shades of gold and crimson, I raised a glass of wine in a silent toast to Eleanor. Her legacy lived on, not just in the art we displayed, but in the courage she had given me to choose justice over profit when everything I loved was at stake. Morrison Fine Arts would continue for generations to come, guided by the values Eleanor had instilled in me and the example I hope to set for Tyler. Some inheritances are measured in dollars, but the most valuable things Eleanor had left me, integrity, moral courage, and the strength to do what's right, even when it's painful, were worth far more than money. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have returned stolen artwork to Holocaust survivors or fought to protect your family's financial inheritance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story about choosing justice over profit while navigating complex family dynamics, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences about family inheritance and the courage to do what's right. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money, but the moral foundation to make difficult choices with integrity.